Ryan Trahan has this trending video about the loneliest house in the world. Well, it was trending about 4 months ago when I started making this video. I wanted to call out a lie in his video. He said that his guide had told him that people thought that the lonely house was built for bird scientists, which isn't true at all, and I bet his guide didn't tell him that. So I actually made a video about 4 months back, calling out Ryan to ride that sweet trending wave to the top. But my video was very boring, unlike Ryan's video, which is actually great. You see, I don't have any footage of the lonely house, and going to the lonely house is both difficult, time-consuming and very expensive, so I figured I'll just make it in 3D. How hard could it be? Just open up Unreal, create an island, drop in a house, buy a new computer, do some other magic, voila, you're done. Maybe I should have just used Google Maps. This was much more difficult, time-consuming and expensive. Now let's debunk Ryan's claim that the house was built for bird scientists to study the famous puffins. Hi, my name is Carl and welcome to the Lonely House. There are so many rumors surrounding the Lonely House which are really easy to clear up because there really is no mystery. I saw this article in the Mirror that claimed it had been abandoned for 100 years. Which is not true at all. It was built in like 1994 to 96. Some seem to think that Björk lives there. She wouldn't be caught dead in this shed. She lives in Vesturbærin, just down the road from me. So if you haven't seen Ryan's video, then here is the deal. In it, he claims that his guide Bjarni told him people thought the house was built for bird scientists. And that was all that he could tell him. That's just so ludicrously untrue, I had to respond. This isn't the only house on the island, as Ryan points out. The house you see sailing past is in fact 2 buildings, one of which is a sauna. But then there is yet another one just down the road, so to speak. The island has been used to feed sheep and horses for hundreds of years, even bulls in the 17th century. I'm not sure how they got the bulls off, but you know. The island is also the home of thousands of puffins and auks, and those were hunted in the thousands. Elliðaey was one of the very best hunting grounds in Iceland, and probably still is. But hunting on such a remote island is not an easy job, so hunters would camp out often in shelters, used for the hay farmed on the islands. In the 18th century, they started using tents and even building little huts. They would stay on the island throughout the entire hunting season, which was about a month during midsummer. They would get a delivery of food and water twice a week, but that wasn't always possible due to the weather, as evident from this boat trying to get back to land from the Lonely House Island in Vestmannaeyjar 1924. They would become stuck on the island. If food or water would not be delivered, they would resort to drinking seawater filtered through mud. And that's how Domino's was invented. It was a very tough profession, but the hunters, they loved it, and this job was very desirable. But the conditions were less than stellar and extremely dangerous. The original hunting hut on Elliðaey is not visible when you sail past the island. I could not find exactly when that was built, but in 1930 it was improved somewhat by adding wooden floors. They also isolated the walls, added a bunk bed and a slushing machine. This hut is tiny and would have been very cold and cramped. Hey! You wanna cuddle? The reason that the Lonely House was built was because the old hut didn't have a nice view. So in 1953 they built a new one, and it was a big improvement. It had 2 floors and even a kitchen. It was expanded in 1985 to 1987. But in 1994 it became apparent that the hut was not going to last because it was beyond repair, so it was demolished. And the house you see today and know as the Lonely House was built by a group that calls itself Elliðaey, and this is their puffin hunting hut. The old house is still used to store the prey, and the hunters, they will stay in the Lonely House during the hunting period, which is only about a week a year now and strictly regulated. And hunting is still very desirable in Vestmann Islands, even if it's not a question of making a living anymore. It's a sport. And some even just do a catch and release. It may be that the hut is also used by scientists, or that scientists were borrowing the hut when Ryan had his visit, and I think Ryan just didn't want to touch the topic of puffin hunting with a 10-foot pole, which is incidentally how the birds are caught in the first place, including the auks, but nobody talks about them for some reason. Perhaps because they're not pretty. Regardless of what your opinion is on the topic, or mine, it's not cool to just deliberately lie. Just don't say anything if you're uncomfortable with the truth. Should puffin hunting be a thing? Probably not. Not only because they are pretty, but also because there aren't that many of them. And I am all for preserving nature. Have a great trip!